Hello and welcome to a Freeman Report special with the amazing Sandi Adams. And if you don't know who Sandi is, she's a researcher, writer and speaker who's been investigating the United Nations and its global plans for well over a decade now. Sandi came to prominence via a video recording of a Glastonbury Town Council meeting that went viral overnight and got millions of views from people around the world. At that meeting, Sandi gave a talk to the council about the United Nations, Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, and about the real agenda behind it all. She's an absolute star, and I'm truly grateful for people like Sandi who do the heavy lifting of trying to make sense of all the detailed plans that are published in order to warn the rest of us about what is going on. Today's special is very much a conversation about the UN, the Club of Rome, and what they're planning without the consent of the world's populations. I also posed some challenging questions to Sandi about what it all means. So please enjoy the show, and if you value it, all that I ask is that you share it with others and give me a follow on X and YouTube, as I'll be posting more interviews like this in the coming weeks. So, welcome back to the Freeman Report, Sandi Adams.
Thank you so much for having me, James. Great to be back.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted that you would do this interview with me, Sandi. Obviously, I came to Stroud at the weekend, didn't I? You were speaking there with Andrew Bridgen, Gemma Cooper it was the Project Libertas event, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, and Charles Mallet too. Yeah,
Yes, of course. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, yes. I mean,
yeah,
I was only there for
of
a couple
course,
of
yeah,
hours of it, wasn't
yeah,
I? But how it seemed like a really good event. It was very, very well attended, really, really upbeat.
yes.
How did the day progress?
It was a really successful day because all the talks kind of dovetailed into each other, with Charles's stuff on legislation and my stuff on communitarianism, which is all part of that legislation. And Andrew just holding it all together and Gemma holding it all together with, what's happening right now. And I just think it was, there's definitely, because always with these events, you never know whether anybody's going to turn up. You
Yeah.
never know whether people think, oh, COVID's over, we don't need to worry about anything now. And people are beginning to realize that there's a bigger agenda going on. And I think it's down to the fact that we all put this out, thank goodness, because people are beginning to pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the thing that really strikes me is how unaware the average person is that all of this stuff's going on. That they're aware of climate change and that governments are talking about we need to save the planet and all of this stuff. But I would say pretty much that's probably about it. It doesn't go much deeper than that for most people. So I guess my first question to you, Sandi, and this is something that I've kind of kind of been debating in my mind, if you can put it that way, when I'm going through all of this stuff, because it's clear to, I think, most people that there are big problems in the world. Okay, not climate change isn't one of them. I think, that's what I believe, and there's a lot of experts now that also say CO2 is not the problem. But there are huge problems in the world. We've got, the diversity of insects and everything we know is
Know
a
that.
problem. We've got pollution, plastic in the seas. The list is long and long. I mean, even locally here, we've got problems with pollution in the rivers
Yeah.
due to sewage overflows and also farming practices, intensive farming practices, like chicken farming, where they've got millions of birds. So there are all these problems in the world. And I guess um, just kind of trying to put myself in the average person's shoes when we talk about what we're going to talk about today is I think they will probably question, well, isn't all this a good thing? The fact that all of this is happening because we've got all these problems, we need solutions. And at the moment, capitalism seems to have run away, consumption and all that kind of stuff. There is no limits to the consumption. Well, I guess the only limit is the number of people in the world. And at the moment, we've got a population in China and in the East which are looking to the West and the way that we look and the consumption we have, and they want that. And so I just wanted to kind of so pick your brains on what you think about that. And I guess this whole movement, which came from the Club of Rome and you know, and the UN and all the rest of it, and there's some key players involved in it. Do you think that actually this is a case of, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that there are, you know, this movement started off, and maybe, and a lot of people that are still in it have good intentions, but that just, you know, when you hand anything over to a corporation and you get a top-down solution, it's not about humanity anymore. It evolves into something else. And I'm playing kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit here with you, Sandy, but I'd just like to pick your brains and kind of what do you think is at the heart of all of this?
At the heart of all of this is money. It's basically the fact that there is no shortage of money. I mean, I don't know whether people don't seem to understand that the City of London actually hides $1.9 trillion worth of assets within it. There is no shortage of money. It's all held in offshore accounts so that you've literally got the currency of drug dealers and traffickers. And this is the problem. You've got massive corporations hiding their assets that should be going to the people of the UK. Those assets should have, they should have some sort of trickle down effect to the people of the UK, but they don't. And three-quarters of the world's hedge fund managers hide their assets in these offshore global hedge fund places offshore. And the fact is that all of this is now coming to a big head because they're now transitioning us from shareholder capitalism into stakeholder capitalism. And that is going to have a devastating effect because it's literally pushing all of this into another darker place where there is no accountability because it will all be in the hands of the WEF and
Yeah.
on the blockchain and being traded. All our assets are being traded. So not only have they done us out of all that money that's hidden in offshore accounts, they're now pushing it onto blockchain data harvesting. So all our assets are being put on the blockchain and traded like, literally like pork bellies. Everything is traded. And I just think that it has to be taken out of these oligarchs. It has to the whole thing, the whole monetary system has to be revised because you say, oh, there's problems with the waterways. Well, that's lack of funding. It's problem reaction solution. I see it here in Somerset. They keep saying, oh, we're going to flood this year. Well, that's because the Environment Agency haven't been given the resources to dredge the reams and to keep up the pumping stations on the levels. All of this is problem reaction solution. So they create a crisis by underfunding. And then the solution is, oh, we need more global governance to
Yeah.
deal with this. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, you know, the world is a complicated place. And so I think, you know, this whole sort of looking at things in black and white, it's very, very easy to do that and use terms like they
Yeah.
and the plan. But in reality, things I think are much more complicated than that. And of course, things are very much more fragmented than that. But I guess, so taking you back to that original question, there are all these problems in the world. And I guess probably the biggest threat, if there is one to humanity, I guess, well, I mean, this is true. We are the biggest threat to us, apart from maybe a meteor hitting or something that we can't control. The next biggest threat to us is us. And I guess the going through all of your slides and looking at the stuff, what this is about is actually is trying, well, how it presents itself is trying to control us. Do you think that putting aside the fact that, you know, when you, like I said, when you hand things to corporations and then all sorts of stuff goes on that wasn't intended, but do you think the intention of this plan at its core is well intended, but it's just that you know, the world is so corrupt and the corporations, or do you think it's actually more sinister than that from right from the start?
I believe there's really well-intentioned people in all of the the Environment Agency and in government, I do believe there's good people. I really do. And I don't think they're aware of how deep it goes. I don't think most people are aware that three-quarters of the world's of the UK's hedge fund managers or the world's hedge fund managers are all offshore and controlled by the
Mm,
City of London. And I think this is something that we kind of, we put our heads in the sand because we think that, oh, the City of London, oh, it's lovely, we have the Lord Mayor's show and it's all a bit of pomp and ceremony, but actually there's quite a sinister side to the work that, that whole, the Crown Corporation of London, with the hidden assets and the hidden everything, and the city remembrancer who records everything that's said in Parliament and relays it back to the Crown Corporation of the City of London to make sure that Westminster are doing as they're told. We don't realise the gravity of all of that, and I think that there are bad people controlling the world. I mean, if you understood, what happened at the Earth Summit, it was bankers and oil billionaires literally clinking their glasses of champagne at the end of it, saying, "We did it. We got everybody to sign up to global governance." They were there on the Royal Yacht Britannia with Prince Charles, all clinking their champagne glasses. And yes, the message is, oh, we're going to save the planet through climate change. But they knew it was a lie because they'd already invested in the carbon credit banks, in the Chicago Climate Exchange, and all the carbon credit banks. They knew they were going to make a killing on all of that. And they're greedy. They're very greedy. And they're doing it all on the back of us believing in climate change. Now, that is wrong. I don't care what you say. Yeah.
yeah. And I guess the other thing here is that, I think wrapped up in all of this, there is these carbon credits, for example. It's all about controlling consumption. Where, everything we do, whether that's, I don't know, getting the bus down into town, buying stuff, consuming stuff, burning fires, energy, everything. It's all about controlling that. And I guess, and I'm just trying to kind of figure all this out, because the average person will I think believes, rightly or wrongly, that there are too many people on the planet, because that's what we've been told for so long, even though actually I think we're on the edge of a population collapse over the
Yeah.
next 100 years,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
anyway, putting that aside, and the reason I'm talking about all of this, Sandy, is because I think, look, the work that you do because you want to reach that average person, and you want to tell them what's going on. And I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes and think about how they
Yeah.
interpret what it is you're saying. So this whole thing about controlling consumption, I think a lot of people will be convinced that that's a good thing. We need to do that because otherwise we're going to destroy the planet. So I guess the challenge is for us is to kind of explain to them what it actually means, what they're doing. So you must have thought about this in, I don't know, let's say in 50 years time, we've gone past Agenda 2030, we've gone past Agenda 2050. In your mind's eye, if everything goes to plan, what they want to do, describe that world for us.
What it's going to be like.
Yes. For
Well,
you and I and anybody else you're trying to reach, what will be the actual reality for people's lives?
if they have their way, we'll be living in a severely depopulated world, with most of the AI doing our jobs. We will be, if we haven't been, got rid of, and I mean that in the most broadest sense. Um, you will be living in a gig economy. If you are lucky enough to have a job, it will be a gig economy, which means that you literally have no rights, employment rights whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, you'll be surveilled and data harvested literally from the moment you open your computer, even before you leave home. We'll be living in a zero trust world where you'll have to authenticate every step of the way. Before you open your computer, you'll have to authenticate because you will be deemed a criminal before you open your computer. And you will be data harvested. The surveillance will start the minute you leave your house. You will be. This is what I mean. or Ida Olkin, the one of the global leaders, the young global leaders, described my world in 2030, and it was frightening. She said, "My world in 2030, I don't own anything. But I'm happy about that. That's where that came from. You will own
Yeah,
nothing but the world."
right, okay.
And she describes the world in 2030 where she's living in a flat she doesn't own, and a flat that when she's out is used for business meetings because it's not her flat, it's everybody's flat because it's all for the greater good. You know, you're saving the planet if you allow people to use your flat when you're not in it as a business meeting area or whatever you might, want to. And she doesn't own anything because it's delivered. If she wants to bake a cake, she can get a food mixer or a liquidizer delivered by Amazon drone to her balcony. So she doesn't need all this equipment. And isn't it wonderful? But it is quite telling that at the end of it, she says, the only thing is, I don't have any privacy. And I hope that all the surveillance isn't used against me. And then she talks about the people that didn't conform, and they live in the freedom camps outside the city, and they don't have access to what we have access to, which is jobs and money and UBI and all that stuff. And it was a very chilling description of the world in 2030. And I believe that that is their vision for us in 2030, is to own nothing and be happy. And I don't think that human beings should be like that. I still believe that the planet is fine. The planet regenerates. It's the most extraordinary thing. It's humans that are having the tough time at the moment, not necessarily the planet. I mean, we know that the planet is regenerates. For instance, the coral is regrowing in on the barrier reef. All of these things are sort of sorting themselves out. And I know it helps when we don't have plastic. We need to address the pollution, but climate change is not the reason for all of this. CO2 is the gas of life. And if it diminishes any more, we will all, plants will die if it diminishes any more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about all of this and I try and fit it into my mind's eye, it's a mix, I think, of Animal Farm and 1984, both George Orwell books, obviously. Animal Farm, because I think, is everybody going to own nothing and be happy? Because I don't think that's what they planned, does it?
No.
It's like the feudal system. It'll be the 98, 99% which
Yeah.
own nothing and forced to live like that. Not everybody. That first of all. So I think, and that's important here because Animal Farm is all about that, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
some animals are more
That
um,
hierarchy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Are more privileged than others. And 1984, because everything we do will be surveilled and questioned. No privacy, and everything will be judged. Every behavior you do will be judged and then thrown back at you. It's quite a scary world. Now, Sandy, the people that, and this is a really it's a difficult one to talk about because you end up saying they,
Mm.
and who are they? Because I think I know enough from people, from talks that you do and from lots of other people do, that we do have this kind of oligarchy, this international
Mm.
oligarchy. It's probably been around in its current form for centuries.
Yeah.
So we're kind of already being in their kind of matrix being managed. But obviously the really scary thing about chapter two, the next chapter, is the technology, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
no longer, like during the Stasi in Germany, in East Germany, where they would have a file on everybody and presumably a big library with or filing building with lots of little files. In the future, they can do it without any of that. They don't need people to control the system because they're going to have AI. And that is the really scary thing, because as long as you've got people controlling it, then there's always a way out. Because they
Yeah.
can't control everybody. They can't control the human mind yet.
Yeah.
Um, but but
That's
yeah,
right.
what is your understanding of who these people are? Who are they, and how
Um,
long have they been governing us like this and,
well,
and managing the world?
I think it's a massively historical thing. And I know some people will think this is a bit out there, but it goes back to in my belief, from the research I've done, it goes right back to Babylon and the black nobility of Venice. And there's always been a ruling elite who control the financial systems. When it was the black nobility in Venice, they were the merchants who controlled all the trade and everything, and they became the bankers, and then they became central banks, like the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve. All of that was to capture the wealth of each nation. And these are private banks. They're not for the
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
They are private, let's face it, and they can do what the hell they like with that money. And I think that all of this has been a ruling class of elites who believe that they have dominion over this earth. And I have to say that it's a if you want to go down the route of saying it's evil, it is evil, in my view. It's evil because it doesn't accept that the human being is anything other than a slave.
yeah. And let's talk about the plan. And this is what a lot of your talk was about on at the weekend. How to bring about global government. And you start the story. I'm sure it starts before this point, but we
Yeah,
have the Club of Rome, don't we?
yeah,
That I think it's 1968
yeah,
that it was formed. And the idea behind that, wasn't it, that we need the world's resources. And I spoke to Kayleen Georgescu recently, and he was president of
yeah,
Europe for the Club of Rome, and he ended up leaving as a whistleblower because of the climate change issue, because he saw that it was a hoax. But the he talked about being very optimistic when he was in that position and started off his
yeah,
career, because they talked about protecting the world's resources
yeah.
and an overpopulation and all these kind of things, a common threat, I guess, to humanity, which needs a global solution. Um, Tell us about that plan and how that then led to the Earth Summit in 1992.
Well, there were several Club of Rome reports. They were chucking around ideas about how to gain control of, how to gain control of the people and get them on board with a common enemy, a common threat that would unite humanity. And they brought together the three Club of Rome reports prior to the Earth Summit. And one was they covered every area of global governance in these reports, and I thought it was quite clever, really. The very first one was limits to growth in 1972, because in 1972 it was very kind of the whole depopulation and population control was a big topic, because a guy had come out with a book called what do you call it? The Population Bomb. A guy called Ehrlich, Paul Ehrlich, had come out with this book called The Population Bomb, and people had bought it in their droves because everybody was going, "Oh my God, the population's going to be way out of control by 1980. We're not going to be able to. There's not enough resources to go around. It's going to be terrible." And he completely catastrophized this whole scenario. Um, and then limits to growth came out of that. That was around 1971, was the population bomb. So in 1972, they published the Club of Rome published limits to growth as a Club of Rome report commissioned by the Club of Rome. And it's all about finite resources and population. There's too many of us, and we must work on population control. And it was really saying there's not enough resources to go round. And the same thing that Paul Ehrlich was saying, that by a certain amount of time, we'd all be doomed, and it never happened. That bomb never went off. And the climate change bomb will never go off either. So then they brought in Our Common Future, which was really, it's called the Brundtland Report. Now, Prince Charles is a great advocate of the Brundtland Report. It was written by Gro Harlem Brundtland of the Brundtland Commission, and she was the Prime Minister of Norway at the time, socialist lady. Well intentioned. She now realizes, believe it or not, she now realizes that she was wrong. Um, That came out in 1987. And that was about redistributing the West's wealth and industries to the third world. It's about leveling up the global economy, which sounds very worthy, doesn't it? It sounds really good. So a lot of money was put into India and China. A lot of our industry went over to India and China. To our detriment, we don't actually create anything now much. It
Yeah.
all went to Germany, India, China. So our industry, was literally hollowed out from inside out. And guess who are the biggest polluters now and aren't being sanctioned? It's them. Excuse me. Um, so I think there's a lot of questions to be asked because all of these and the final Club of Rome report was, I think, the most important one, which is this one. It's the first global revolution. I have a copy here. I've had this for many, many years. Um, now, this was all about chucking around ideas about how to create scapegoating. It was a lot about scapegoating. Do you mind if I just quote from it?
Yeah, no, go for it.
On page 108, it says, the need for enemies seems to be a common historical factor. States have striven to overcome domestic failure and internal contradictions by designating external enemies. The scapegoat practice is as old as mankind itself. When things become too difficult at home, divert attention by adventure abroad. Bring the divided nation together to face an outside enemy, either a real one or else one invented for the purpose. So this is how
Wow.
evil they are. And then on page 115, they found who that enemy could be. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all people. Um, all these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it's only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself.
Yeah.
So we became the enemy in 1991, the year before the Earth Summit. The year
Now,
before the Earth Summit.
the interesting thing, Sandy, is and I've learned this through the COVID period, is a lot of this all comes down to trust, I think, because like you, I've argued with lots of people about COVID and about the injections and everything else, and it's never about the information. I think for the average person, it's about who do they trust. It's
Yeah.
tribal, who do I trust? Because you can give all the evidence you want, but if they're in a different tribe, they
Yeah.
just discount it. And I guess what is striking for me about this whole thing is we've kind of discussed there are lots of problems in the world, aren't there?
Yeah.
Um, and I would suggest probably the biggest fundamental problem that we've got in the world is the corporation,
Yeah.
the structure of the corporation, the fact that its only behest is to its shareholders. It's literally written into its legal structure that corporations are responsible for delivering profit to shareholders, nothing else, not
Yeah.
for saving the planet, not for doing good. So
And that gets worse when it's put into stakeholder capitalism because
yeah,
that
but
is
but
what's
but the
worse.
thing is, Sandy, and this is where I'm thinking in terms of that average person, how you explain this, and you ask the question. So, I think all of the world's problems come down to that structure, that corporate structure, because they are the ones that have set the model that we're on at the moment, which is destroying or creating lots of destruction to the planet. So it just seems crazy to me that the answer to this problem, if there is a problem, there are problems, it might not be the ones they're saying, but the answer to this is to give full control over everything to those same corporations, because that is what this plan is about, isn't it?
Yes, I mean the thing is that the whole um you can go back. It was interesting that Charles Mallet, I don't know whether you were there, he made a sort of references to how what's happening now is very similar to what happened in Nazi Germany. And it suddenly resonated with me, and I forgot that ages ago I used to put into my PowerPoints about the something called the Red House Report that happened in 1944. Um, and it was when Hitler was losing the war. The top SS decided to abandon Hitler, and they said, right, we will hold. They held a meeting. The top SS officers held a meeting in Strasbourg at the Maison Rouge. It was the Red House Hotel. And they invited all the massive corporations of Germany to that. And you can still find this online. You can find all the people that were invited to that meeting. And it was people like IG Farben and all the big pharmaceuticals, the big companies, IBM, all of the companies that finance the whole regime. They were invited to this meeting, and basically the SS officers said, we've realised we can't win this militarily. This war, we can't win it militarily. We will have to do it a different way. And they said, we will bankroll you from all the money that they'd plundered from Europe during the war. We will bankroll you. Go and create massive corporations. We will take over the world that way. And that's exactly what happened. Sorry, you looked for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should put that in my PowerPoints again. It's something that I used to do years ago, and actually it's fundamental now. It's fundamental that that is what has happened, is that the corporations have been put in place of everything. We don't even have representative government now. It's all run by PPPs, public-private partnerships, and it's getting worse, that corporations are running the show above our elected parliament. And you can tell that because, our parliament is not even, has no power. Rishi Sunak gave the baton to Starmer. They're all on the same page. They don't know what the hell's going on, really. They're just doing it to keep their hedge funds up. They've all got massive, massive, most of the politicians who are have power in our parliament are lawyers, and there's a reason for that, because they know how to work the system, and they know how to work the legislation, and they've also got massive money in all these hedge funds. We
Yeah.
know that all the PPE for COVID, they all had their fingers in the trough, their fingers at their noses in the trough. That all of this was just disgusting, disgusting oligarchy beyond belief. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is the key, Sandy, in terms of trying to bring people around that have been told all of their life that the world is in danger and we've got to do something. And as far as they can see, the politicians are talking about that,
Yeah.
is that the plan which they're on board with. And I guess it's a little bit like, and you'll be aware of this, in the 1960s, there was an environmental movement. It was quite strong in the UK. That was taken over. That
Yeah.
has been hijacked. And a lot of the original environmentalists, true environmentalists who talked about localism, about, growing stuff organically and delivering it locally. All of these people have left because they saw what happened. The corporations
Yeah.
came in, and the whole movement has been hijacked. And I think this is the thing that we have to get across to people, that look, because I think, when we attack all of this plan and we attack the UN and we say that this is all bad, I guess one interpretation of that for the average person could be, well, these people don't care about the planet.
Yeah.
They don't care because what's their solution? They're not offering an alternative. They're just telling us all of this stuff is bad, bad, bad. And I guess there is some truth to that, because we are kind of
Might be.
almost
I mean,
there.
yes, there might be. I mean, some people accuse me of not caring, but I do care. I care deeply, and it's about exposing the corruption. That is my way of sort of caring, really. Because I mean, I used to be a member of the Ecology Party in the 1990s, and I left in the early 90s because it got taken over. It got taken over by the Green Party. The Green Party literally infiltrated the Ecology Party in the 1990s. That's when David Icke left the Green Party.
Yes.
That's when I
Yeah.
left the
Yeah.
Green Party. Um, because you could see that it was and look at what was his name, that lovely man who used to have TV programs on the BBC. Oh gosh, I've forgotten his name. David Bellamy. He was completely he was completely taken off. You know, he was silenced because of his views on climate change, and he was the most amazing ecologist, and he actually had letters behind his name, unlike David Attenborough, who's just a TV presenter. And David Attenborough became the voice of climate change, having not had any degree in psychology, in ecology whatsoever. So I think, you know, there's a lot to be said about that. And it was funny, it was at that same time that I read Rose. If anybody wants to look at how the Green Party hijacked the Ecology Party, read Rosa Corey's Behind the Green Mask. It shows you the step by step totalitarian tiptoe to the taking over of the Ecology Party and the Green, you know, how the Green Party did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
it was,
think, yeah, sorry, Sandy. And I think this is key because, you know, if we took, I use the example of the supermarkets, for example, in the UK here. I won't mention any names, but, you know, we talked about the state of the rivers. Well, on the one hand, all of their marketing to the public is about, oh, well, we've got charging spaces in our car parks where you know we're focusing on reducing energy in stores. We're saving the planet because it's all about CO2 and we need to reduce that. So
yeah,
that is kind of the front shop, the marketing which the
yeah,
supermarkets are presenting to the public. But behind the scenes, they are like, for example, in you know Ross on Wye, that river now here, um, they've all of the chicken farms there have been funded by the supermarkets. They basically wouldn't exist without the supermarkets, so that they can sell a £4 chicken, and there are millions and millions and millions of them along that river. I mean, well, millions. I don't
it's
know what the
all,
number is. It's 25 million or something, and the river is dying
yeah,
because as a result of all the pollutions that
no,
are created from
yeah,
the muck and whatnot. That I mean, it could be managed, but it'd be very, very expensive. But they're not, and it's ending up in the river. And so again, I think these people that obviously they've been told since they were, you know, 3 years old that the planet is in dire straits and that you know the air is being polluted, the seas are being polluted, you know, they're really concerned. I think for me, the answer to bringing people across is to tell them. It's almost like, you know, I thought about this the other day, maybe telling a story where each of these big corporations is a person.
yeah,
So, because I guess in legal terms, they are people, aren't they? Which is
oh,
bonkers. That's a
yes,
whole other rabbit hole. But
whole
anyway,
other
to
talk, yeah,
depict them as people and then say, right, okay, Mr. Farmer, for example, you know, they've been in front of the courts bribing because they you know, they've been fined billions and billions for bribery, for fraud, for medical negligence, for killing people, killing hundreds of thousands of people with their products, and they knew it was happening.
yeah,
Now, that person over there and his mate, you know, I don't know, BP and Shell, I don't know, you give them a name, but the
yeah,
point is, do you trust these people knowing all the things they've done? Do you want to trust them? They're saying to us, we can solve it all. But
yeah,
they are the cause of the problem. And this is, I guess, you know, for me, because otherwise, I think when I went through your slides this morning and going through it all, I think from an average person that doesn't necessarily understand the vision of where all this is leading, is it that could be an advert, your slides. Oh, great,
mm,
they're doing something about it. You
yeah,
know, because there are lots of people who believe, yeah, we need to get rid of cars. We you know, we need to stop eating meat. You know, there's a whole movement of that. They've been convinced of all of these things. So I guess for me, that's how we solve this in terms of bringing people over. Is that yes, okay, we have got these problems in the world that we need to solve, but do we really want to hand it over,
yeah,
you know, to these people
so
who
corrupt,
are criminals?
are criminals, yeah. They're no better than, yeah, they are criminals. And you know, they have no scruples either. They have no scruples about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, this whole thing about, you know, forcing people who have a few chickens in their garden to register them and have them, you know, and check up on them and all that stuff. And you know, you just realize that also the environmental and social governance contracts and the biodiversity net gain contracts are to control the land and the businesses under the guise of climate change. It's another tax on businesses and landowners. And if people understood that, that it's yet another massive tax on businesses and landowners, then people would object to it. But it's all done in the name of saving the planet, so it's okay. We can
Yeah.
completely fleece you. We can fleece you because it's for the greater good. It's that
Yeah.
communitarian thing.
Yeah.
It's greater good. And it doesn't wash with me. I mean, when you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Yeah.
So Sandy, let's so we've kind of framed it, and I'm hoping that there will be some people watching this that aren't convinced. So we've kind of framed it, and I think nobody would disagree the fact that the corporations, the model that we've adopted today around the world, which is causing so much destruction, is the model set up by the corporation. So let's talk about what this big plan is, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050, because as far as I can see, it's all about creating public-private partnerships, PPPs, right? And you have the UN at the top of this, which has signed an agreement with the World Economic Forum, the WEF, a memorandum of understanding that was signed in 2019. And as far as I can, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I can determine, this plan, what it involves is the corporations are being given control of the wall, everything in the world, the water, the
Yeah.
land, the trees, the air, all of it. They're going to be handed control of all of that. And then
Can I,
governments, yeah, go on, Sandy.
yeah, you can edit this. I just want to get a book of mine. You can edit
Yeah.
this. Now where's it gone? Where has it gone? Oh, yes, right up here. Finish what you were going to say. Yes, they've been given
Yeah, I won't.
the
I won't
task of
edit. I
only
won't.
edit.
I'll leave. I'm going to leave this in because it is a proper conversation we're having. I mean,
Yeah,
I always, when I was on TNT, you've only got 20 minutes per interview, so I've got everything
yeah.
carefully written down. I wanted to have a conversation with you, Sandy. So the point is, we've established that these corporations, they're corrupt, they're criminal, they are literally criminal organizations, and I think most people. It's difficult to argue against that because the evidence is there. Pharma, for example, the list of court cases and absolutely despicable evil that has been done by these corporations is just astonishing. So, and when you then learn that these same corporations, the plan is to hand control of all the world's resources to them, and governments, instead of them being sort of the public servants, as it was, that they were elected by us, they become the enforcers in this whole deal, don't they?
yeah, yeah, indeed. I mean, this is interesting because this huge tome. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this is called the Global Diversity Assessment, and it was published in just after the Earth Summit. Although it had been in the making way before the Earth Summit, because it's 1,024 pages, and this is a catalogue, a management and control inventory of everything on our planet. Literally every single
Yeah,
resource, every single rock, mineral, animal, plant. It is a control, and more than anything, it's a manage how they're going to manage it, and how they're going to take any and remove man from the equation. In this book, there's nothing mentioned about man until you get to page. I'm such a geek. Till you get to page, I think it's 119, no, 194. I think it is 1094, where they talk about having us in what they call human settlement zones, with corridors in between, because we have destroyed the planet. Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, this was created by the UN. It was called the UN Biodiversity Report, and it literally has everything in it, except humans. And then the humans. This is where the whole what did they call them? These population. No, what did they call them? The rewilding. This is where rewilding came from, because they now hold rewilding conferences where they aim to rewild 50% of the planet, you know, and keep humans completely controlled and surveilled. And I think, at first it was going to be smart cities. I think they failed with the smart city agenda because in the sort of around 2000, early 2000s, mid 2000s, they had a smart city index in the UK at least. And it was going to be a set amount of smart cities that everybody would be herded into. Now, that didn't happen because they fail at everything they try and do, which is really good.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the 15-minute cities are the alternative to that. Because well, we can't herd them into smart cities. We'll just lock them up where they are. And that's what I think happened. So, yeah, I mean, I bought that book. I think it must have been 15 years ago because you can't get them now. But it's a resource that you know what the plan is because they talk about the management and control of every resource on the planet, but man is out of that equation.
Yeah. Now, Sandy, you know, they've got a plan that's clear. And this plan has been around for a long time. It's very, very developed. The UN has been working very, very hard on this for a very long time. Huge amount. I mean, I know people who work in NGOs globally, and when you add all the NGOs in, there's huge resources going on around the world at the moment into delivering this plan. But it's not an easy thing to do, and I want to talk about how COVID fits into this plan because there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, but you can join up all the dots. There's a lot, there's crazy things. I mean, the whole transgender thing which is going on around the world, that's not happening by accident. That is all tied into this as well because it's not a coincidence, is it, Sandy, that this is going on in
Absolutely.
all countries around the world. And we're talking about a population which represents in the UK here, well, a fraction of a percentage of the overall population. And yet it seems to be everywhere, in our faces. How did that happen? That such a minute minority of the population is, and there's a reason for that. I don't want to go around that rabbit hole now, but I do want to talk about COVID.
Yeah.
Because how does COVID fit into all of this
Well,
conversation?
it's interesting because the UN have failed, and this is my only, great hope is that they fail at everything they try and do, and they've tried to implement global governance now since probably the 70s, really, and they got to after the Earth Summit, they made a promise to themselves that by 2000 they made the 8 Millennium Goals.
Yes, I remember the Millennium
Yeah,
Goals.
you
Yeah.
remember the late 8 million to be completed by 2000. Well, that fell flat on its face as well. No, they didn't get that done. And so in by the time 2015 happened, nothing much had happened. They were lagging behind. So they decided to have this big flurry of an event in Rome to launch the 17 goals of Agenda 2030. And they needed to get everything done by 2030. So they'd moved the goalposts from 2020 to 2030. And 2030 is just a goal. And
Yeah.
the Pope endorsed it, and Obama was there, and it was all, we're going to have these goals, and they're all wonderful. They're going to help humanity, which they're not. And then, of course, that didn't work, because by the time um, it got to 2019, not a lot had happened. We'd had Greta Thunberg wagging her finger at us, saying, "Oh my God, you terrible people, climate change and all that." She had been big in the news. And then after that, she was gone. When COVID happened, she disappeared. Because what happened was the UN Forum Partnership got together in Geneva in 2019 to accelerate the 17 goals of sustainable development by 2030. The UN Forum Partnership was signed at a meeting held by the United Nations. So Klaus Schwab was there, and Antonio Guterres was there, and they signed this UN Forum Partnership. And the main parts of this partnership were to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. The partnership identifies 6 areas of focus: the financing of 2030 agenda, climate change, health, digital cooperation, remember that one, Gender equality and empowerment of women, education and skills to strengthen and broaden their combined impact by building on existing and new collaborations. Now, digital cooperation was to meet the needs of the fourth industrial revolution while seeking to advance global analysis and standards for digital governance and digital inclusiveness. Now, that sounds pretty awful to me, but there you are. Now, that would be fine if 4 months later, they met in New York, the same people, but with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they held a 3-day tabletop exercise in the Johns Hopkins facility in New York. And it was a what if exercise. What if a novel coronavirus escaped from a wet market in Brazil, and ended up going all over Europe, all over the world? What would we do? And there was Bill saying, yeah, I've got the answer here. Yeah, I've got the vaccine. Even though he'd already 8 years previously had patented the vaccine at the Pirbright
Yeah.
Institute in Wiltshire. So, there they were. It was problem, reaction, solution again. And after that, it just, and even Klaus Schwab said, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. He got what he wanted. He got the digital cooperation because whilst we were sleeping, whilst we were locked up, all the biometrics went in, all the roads were dug up, putting high fiber connections in. The biometrics went into supermarkets, all the human tills went. You've got all those tills where your facial recognition is taken
Yeah.
whilst you're doing the transactions. All of this happened while we were sleeping, while we were locked up, and that's what it was all about.
Yeah, and of course the vaccine passport system and databases. I mean, the EU created probably one of the world's biggest one, apart from China,
Yeah.
certainly in the West anyway. And of course, they've handed that now to the WHO, that the structure of all of that. And I think it launches in December this year. There's a practice run of the whole thing. There's 5 countries in Europe that are part of this, and they're going to roll that out in 2026. So you're absolutely right. COVID was a vehicle for bringing about a lot of I guess, the apparatus that they need to put all of their plan into place. I'm just going to mention it, Sandi, because when you talked about the things they talked about, empowerment of women. I mean, I just look because the UN Women, which is a UN organization out of New York, they put champions in each country for women. And I know you'll know this, but maybe some of the viewers won't. But the champion they chose to be the champion for women in the UK is a man.
Yes, I know. I know. This is what they're all about. It's all about inversion, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's this whole evil inversion of everything. Everything that we hold dear, everything that we understand. They want to cause as much chaos because out of chaos they can create order, their new world order. And I think it is causing chaos. I mean, look at the sports world where you've got women competing against men, but they're told they're women. I mean, the whole thing is a nonsense.
yeah. I think most people are just confused, totally confused by all of that. But at the same time, they want to be kind because that's what they're told. It's like, be kind. Oh, don't, you can't criticize these poor people. They're very vulnerable and everything else. I mean, that whole issue, I think, is just one massive psyop,
Yeah,
essentially, to confuse
yeah,
the hell out of everyone. And also the other thing that psyop does is that by taking a minority of the population and putting their rights above everyone else, you create anger.
yeah.
And then suddenly the authorities can say, well, we need hate speech laws. We need censorship because
Okay.
people are being horrible to these poor, vulnerable people. But of course, they've created that in the first place. And they've created it
Gaslighting,
for
isn't it?
that. They've
Yeah,
done it to
yeah,
create the hate, which
yeah.
then justifies the solution, which is, well, we need to censor you, or we need to, we need hate speech laws. We need powers to walk into your house without a warrant so that we can take all your devices and make sure that you're not being horrible. to these minorities. I mean, it just I think all of that, it's most people just haven't got a clue. They just see it and they think, well, I don't
Yeah.
want to be seen to be mean, so I'm just kind of going to go along with it. When actually, you ask them what they think about men competing against women and pretending they're women, and like David Lammy, for example, says that he actually said this, that men can grow a cervix. That's what he
That's
said. Men can grow a
biological
cervix if they're
impossibility.
given. I know it's bonkers, but people just, I think, because it is bonkers, but I think people just in their mind, most people don't want to put their head above the parapet and seem mean, so that emotion overrides
Yeah,
their what the hell is going on? Because that's the
yeah,
first thing in my mind. It's just like, forget all of that. I don't care what people think about me. I just think this is absolutely bonkers. But I think most people, they're controlled in that way and they've got no idea about that. Now, before we go down too many rabbit holes, Sandy, because I know we're running up to nearly an hour now. And I don't want to make this, because we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours.
absolutely.
Let's talk about the two things I want to talk about, which have happened recently. The Summit of the Future, which is a UN summit, which was held just a matter of weeks ago, and also the Bird Flu Summit. So let's start with the Summit of the Future. What kind of things were they discussing at that, Sandy, and what was agreed?
Well, the pact covers a broad range of issues. I mean, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, digital cooperation. Again, it's the same old, same old. Human rights, which aren't human rights, as we know, it's European human rights, which don't cover. They're not, as Charles said at the weekend, they're not worth the paper they're written on, because they're rights that protect the minority over the democratic majority, and
Yeah,
that cannot
yeah,
be right. um, Gender, youth, and future generations, and the transformation of global governance on sustainable development, climate, and financing for the development. Um, Mobilizing more financing by multilateralism. I don't quite know what that means, actually. I've got to look at all this on a deeper level. But basically, on digital cooperation, the digital compact, so they've voted on the global digital compact, annexed to the pact, is the first comprehensive global framework for digital cooperation and AI governance. That sounds great, doesn't it? Um, the heart of the compact is a commitment to design, use, and govern technology. There you go. So really, it's about they're holding this digital compact, and it's very similar. It's almost word for word what they did in Geneva in 2019 with the global whatever it was. What was it called? It was called the framework, the framework partnership agreement in Geneva in 2019. But what was interesting, as I said, after that compact, after that global um, framework meeting, they then had Event 201. Well, 3 or 4 days after having the Pact for the Future, um, they held the bird flu summit in, I don't know where it was actually. Anyway, they held this bird flu summit, and it's welcome to the International Bird Flu Summit, where we address the pressing concerns surrounding the recent developments in avian influenza, with the emergence of a highly virulent strain of bird flu affecting cattle and humans. It's imperative that we come together to discuss preparedness, response strategies, and the future implications of this evolving situation. Um, and they're talking about mass fatality management planning, surveillance and data management, local partnership and participation, delivery of vaccine and antiviral medication. It just goes on and on. Energy response, emergency response management, business-based planning, community-based planning. So really, they're really getting this planned for another pandemic. And as we know, I think it was in at the beginning of the year, loads of uh, vaccines were flew in, avian flu vaccines were flown in from Japan to the UK. So I think it could be that they're trying again. What?
And do you think, Sandy, because one of the things that I has crossed my mind is, look, you keep on saying that they keep on failing, and they do.
Yeah, they
They do.
do.
And part of their problem is, and somebody very, very clever person once said to me, look, um, not that bad things won't happen along the way, but he said they will not succeed because their greed, they
Yeah,
will fight amongst each other. Because to deliver
yeah,
this plan, they all need to work together, and they will not be able to do that. They will fight amongst each other for control
exactly.
of all of this, and so it will all ultimately fail. Now, the only thing that scares me with that is that they might conclude that maybe they just need to get rid of most of us.
Yeah, we have to pray a lot. I don't know. I don't know. I think they may. I mean, it would be the most ridiculous thing to sacrifice the human population for their crazy plans. And I don't honestly think it will come to that. I don't. I have to believe that. Yeah,
But
I
but
have.
do you, but the thing is with this, bird flu, that's just because look, let's put our tinfoil hats on because we do believe that. I think most people believe that well, COVID was made in a lab. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but that is what most people believe. I guess you can argue, was it released accidentally? There's a lot of people who think it wasn't, and we're part of that because it is part of the apparatus they're using to bring about these change. But um bird flu, well, it could be that could, because I think if they try another pandemic like COVID, the populations around the world have learned an awful lot about that. And even people that are not aware of anything that we're talking about now, they've got not got a clue. I think there's a lot of people who say, well, I'm not going to do lockdown again. The
Yeah.
government can,
And let's not forget we had avian flu in the 90s, wasn't it? Was it the
yeah,
90s, 2000s? I can't remember. But we had avian flu then and it didn't come to anything. And they're really pushing this misinformation, disinformation. They're running so scared. They're saying misinformation, disinformation, hate speech pollutes the information ecosystem. Now it's an ecosystem, apparently. Um, and it threatens human progress. And Antonio Guterres says the proliferation. He's the obviously he's the chairman of the United Nations. He says the proliferation of hate and lies in the digital space is causing grave global harm. Now it's fueling conflict, death, and destruction. Now it's threatening democracy and human rights. Now it's undermining public health and climate action. Actually, they're the ones that are actually destroying democracy and human rights,
yeah,
not us. We're
it
calling
is.
it out.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little bit of a quiz for you, Sandy. I'm going to
okay,
read out a quote,
yeah,
and I want you to see if you can figure out who is it who said it.
okay.
We may get to the point where the only way of saving the world will be for industrialized civilization to collapse. And isn't it our responsibility to bring this about?
Yeah, that's Maurice Strong from the Earth
Yeah.
Summit in 1992. Yeah,
And he was a UN General Secretary, and
secretary,
he's
and
there saying it.
he organised the
We
Earth Summit.
It is
Yeah,
our responsibility to destroy Western civilization.
yeah,
That was an actual UN
yeah.
General Secretary who said that and is quoted. Amazing, isn't that?
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy Western civilization, and they're really targeting the UK because the City of London sits there, and it's immensely powerful. I think they're really targeting the UK.
But the City of London is part of this, isn't it?
Yeah, the City of London is
Yeah.
part of it. And what's really concerning is that I read the other day, and I don't know how true this is. I've really tried to get to the bottom of it, but there is a plan to move the City of London to Astana in Kazakhstan. Now, that is desperately worrying. They've got this whole smart city called Astana, and they are moving an awful lot. The main language is English. They're moving corporations over there, making this huge thing. And there's a plan to move the City of London to Astana. So actually, the City of London won't be in control. The WEF will be in control because it's a WEF project. Now, I think they're mad. I mean, if you look at Astana, it's totally bonkers. Do have a look at it. It's the weirdest place. They've even got, they've got this pyramid, which is it's the Church of Peace, which isn't peace at all. And it's a brand new sort of smart city, very spooky indeed. So I'm just
Yeah.
hoping, not just making people aware of that, because we have to really hang on. The City of London is bad. What we have to do is really maintain that, have a different system. So the City of London isn't holding three-quarters of the wealth of the world. That is wrong. Why is it? Why isn't that trickled down to help people and to invest
Yeah.
in small businesses that work instead of massive corporations?
Yeah. And Sandy, I
Why isn't it,
think
why isn't it helping TNT?
yeah, no, I
Yeah,
know. And I think, look, I think the reason that there is this urgency amongst this global, whoever they are, global, I don't like calling them elites because they're not better than us, but there is a certain urgency. And I think that that has a lot to do with technology as well, because
yep,
we are now with blockchain and particularly decentralization, and that's a whole other topic, but essentially what decentralization does, whether you're talking about whether it's financial or governance, is taking them out of the equation.
out
Like,
of the equation,
you with
exactly.
decentralized finance, you don't need a middleman, you don't need a bank, you don't need an insurance company. We can do this through smart contracts, and I think it scares the living bejesus out of them, because they've been sitting in their ivory castles for
Yeah,
centuries now, owning the money printers. I mean, money to them is just paper. They can print as much money as they want. Um, and we're moving into a world where now there's an option for us all to exist without them. We don't need them. And I
exactly.
think, I
Exactly.
think,
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that all the time we've got all our councils are now saying they're bankrupt. But I know that Somerset County Council had actually invested a lot of assets in the Cayman Islands. That's our council tax. And what we need to do is stop public councils from issuing public contracts to companies operating out of tax havens. We have to create public regularities of beneficial owners of companies, trusts, and foundations. We have to introduce full transparency of deals and secret agreements between companies and government. That's important because that's how the
mm,
corruption occurs. Introduce public country by country reporting by multinational companies and introduce automatic information exchange between all countries. In my view, those 5 points would solve the problem.
yeah,
It really would. So, the thing is that it's gone a bit further now because you've got the WEF with their fingers in the trough or their noses in the trough. So, the WEF is literally the most evil. They've been around since 1968 or 78, isn't it? But they kept very, very under the radar until COVID, and then suddenly they popped their evil head up. So I think I think it's all bluster. I think this whole financial system, it's a bit like, the Wizard of Oz. It's like the man behind the curtain who doesn't really have any power. And it's like pulling that curtain across and saying, are, you're a criminal.
yeah,
And I honestly think that calling them out every time, and I think, bless us, we in this movement have done so much to stop stuff, and we will continue to do so. And I think that we will win this because they've failed so many times, and they won't
yeah.
win.
I think we will win it, but I guess, and this is for a conversation for another day, Sandy, and it was kind of how we started off. So I think
Yeah,
it's kind of full circle, is that at the moment we are ringing the bell, aren't we?
yeah,
We're ringing the bell. We're warning people
yeah,
about this road they're going down, which the average person who they believe that this is going to solve all the world's problems. And actually what they don't realize is that the world's problems, which they've been convinced that are going to be solved, are actually created by the same people they're following at the
yeah,
end of that road.
yeah.
But we don't have an alternative at the moment. That
No.
is, I think, the biggest
It's
problem.
about creating that alternative, and we need some smart people in tech. We need some smart people in finance. We need some smart people who understand how we could make it work. What do we
Yeah.
know?
Well,
So
I
yeah,
think I think Sandy, I think to be honest with you, when you think about what a democracy is, actually that should be the foundation of the solution. It's just
yeah,
that our democracies are being corrupted because and people are being distracted because actually most people in communities, what do they really want? And they just want to be happy. People just want to be happy. They want to
Oh,
bring up their families, live their
oh,
lives,
yeah.
and be free and be happy. They, whereas actually, you look at the opposition to the people, because that's where these solutions should come. It should come from bottom up, and that was always the plan with democracy. It's just that our democracies are being captured. But if you look at the opposite side of that, the top down, they're all bonkers.
They are
Klaus
bonkers.
Schwab, give him a white cat, and he is the
Yes,
Bond villain.
he's Blowfield, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen him in that funny outfit with the wings.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I
yes.
mean, he is a total nutcase. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. And Yuval Harari is another one. Total
Yeah. So
nutcase.
Sandy, let's leave because we will talk again in the future.
Okay.
Let's leave it here. For me, this is all about trust. And
Yeah.
if you want to break it down and talk about people, whether they're legal entities, corporations, or people in legal terms, who do you trust? Do you trust Sandi Adams, who's got nothing to gain by all of this, just trying to warn you that those people that are taking you down this path, they're criminals? They're criminals and they are the source of the problems which they're telling you they're going to solve. That is the key thing here to bringing average people around. It's getting that across that the people that are telling you they have the solutions to the problems are the people that created the problems in the first place. And do you really want to trust them with saving the planet when they're the people who've destroyed it in the first place? There you go. Full
Thank you.
circle.
Thank you so much, James. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.